You may be seated. A woman goes and buys a parrot to bring home as a pet. And when she brings this parrot home, it starts talking, as parrots like to do. The only problem is that this parrot has a filthy mouth. It is cursing constantly. It's as if it was previously owned by a sailor or something. No offense to any sailors out there. She tries everything. She delicately covers the cage with a beautiful cloth. She plays it soft and soothing music. She tries to reason with it, but all to no avail. The parrot continues to utter strings of utter profanity, the likes of which she had never heard before. Finally, after a few days of this, in a moment of lapsed judgment and frustration, she grabs the parrot and shoves him into the freezer and closes the door behind. The bird screams and curses and rattles the freezer door, and then silence. Terrified, she runs over to the freezer and opens the door quickly, and the parrot steps out slowly and clears his throat. "Madam, I am deeply sorry for my behavior," he says. "It was uncalled for, and I intend to do better." Stunned, the woman asks, "What happened in there?" And the parrot straightens up and says, "Well, I saw what you did to the turkey." Sorry. Welcome to Easter. Hallelujah, Christ is risen. The Lord is risen indeed. Hallelujah. Well, I've tried to ease you into Easter with a little bit of a joke this morning, but unfortunately, our gospel writer, Matthew, gives us no such courtesy. You see, Matthew's resurrection gospel starts with an earthquake, and it's a great one at that. There's an angel that descends from heaven, appearing like lightning, whose clothes are as white as snow. The angel rolls back the stone and sits upon it. There are guards who have been hardened Roman soldiers that are now shaking with fear and fall down like dead men, stunned by the news. This scene, the scene that Matthew paints, I think is more akin to a battlefield than an idyllic Easter morning. I think Matthew wants you to feel the scale of this before you meet anyone in it. Something here has happened that the earth itself could not absorb without trembling. The ground has cracked open. The cosmos have been rearranged. This is what it looks like when God decides to go all in. Not safely from a distance, not God as an idea or God as an inspiration or God as a theological proposition, but from inside a tomb. The same hands that made the world wrapped in burial linen, the same voice that said, "Let there be light," has been silent for 3 days. God did not watch this from somewhere safe. Jesus went all in and all the way through. It's into this scene, into all of this, that these two women arrive, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary, ordinary people dropped into the middle of an extraordinary rupture. The angel speaks to them. "Do not be afraid. He has been raised. Go quickly. Go quickly and tell his disciples," the angel says. And they go. Matthew says that they left the tomb quickly with fear and great joy and ran to tell the disciples. Fear and great joy. It's a little odd to me. It's not fear that gave way to joy. It's not joy that conquered fear. It's both fear and great joy at full volume, simultaneous in their experience, and they're running. They are running to tell everyone. Years ago, right before I became a priest, I was a field ed student, kind of like Alex, our seminarian. Here, I was serving at a church in Baltimore City, a church that I loved dearly. The congregation had a long history of doing hard things, of saying yes even when that yes was costly. In fact, that congregation had built a building without a steeple because they didn't think that was the best use of their money, something we know a little bit about. They had opened their doors in ways that made some people uncomfortable so that they could include people who had been left out for so long. They had more than once heard an angel say to them, "Do not be afraid," and then the angel proceeding to tell them something absolutely terrifying. So I preached a couple of sermons there, but there's one sermon in particular that I can still feel what it was like to stand in that pulpit. The sermon was about giving ourselves away for God, the same way that Jesus gave himself away for us. It was a sermon about all the ways, so many ways that the church ends up getting seduced into comfort and self-preservation, about choosing costly faithfulship over careful survival. It was quite the sermon. I was really excited about it. I believed every word of it, and yet in the back of my head, I also knew this sermon could get me in some trouble because it was a barn burner. What I didn't say out loud was that underneath all of that, I had some fear. You see, I was near the end of my formation process to become a priest, and I had already been cautioned on more than one occasion about saying the quiet parts too loudly. So it was risky. It was risky to preach this sermon, and I knew that going in, and I chose to preach it anyway. The rector who had supported me and who herself had poured herself into my own formation to become a priest, afterwards pulled me aside and said, with a kind smile, not a broad smile, there's a difference between a kind smile and a broad smile, she said, "You probably could never preach that as a rector." And she was right. She wasn't criticizing in that moment. She was just naming something that was true. But then I turned and went to coffee hour, and people came up to me beaming, saying that it captured exactly who they were and who they wanted to be as a church. I left that morning full of fear and great joy, both at the same time, simultaneous fear and joy mixed into this experience where I felt like I was running with those women. Here's what I think Matthew is trying to tell us in this morning's gospel, that the resurrection does not resolve fear and joy. In fact, I would say resurrection incites them. You see, we live in a world that promises resolution. If we can just elect the right leader, we tell ourselves. If we can just set the right policy, if we can just have our eyes fixed on the right outcomes, then the chaos will finally settle down around us. We are waiting, always waiting for things to calm down. When that fear will go away and we feel like we can breathe again. But Easter doesn't give us that. Easter does not give us that. Jesus does not come back to life to continue the status quo. He comes back to reshape the entire world. Matthew is writing to a people living under occupation in a world filled with frightened rulers and impossible power. It's not so different from the world that we walked into from this morning. And it's into that world, the most cataclysmic event in human history, and that cataclysmic event does not produce calm. It produces two women running down the road at full speed with fear and great joy. Because fear and joy are not opposite forces this morning. They are two responses to the same enormous truth. The same fact that cracks the world open is the source of the joy, and you can't have one without the other. You cannot wait for your fear to subside before joy comes barreling into the picture. And that's not a failure of faith. I actually think that's what it feels like when something real is happening to us. The women were not afraid because they didn't believe. They were afraid because they did. And then Matthew gives us something almost too quiet to notice toward the end of the gospel. Jesus meets these two women on the road, mid-run, mid-stride, and he greets them with one word: rejoice. Rejoice, he says to them, and something happens in their bodies before it happens in their minds. Their feet stop. Their eyes widen. And then they are on the ground, not because they decided to kneel in that moment, but because their legs gave way beneath them. And they reach. They reach for the only part of Jesus that they can get to: his feet. Dust-covered, calloused, feet that walked the roads of Galilee, feet that stood in the Jordan River, feet that were nailed and wrapped and sealed, feet that they had never imagined touching again. And yet, there they were, holding on, clinging on for dear life, holding on to those feet. And so do we. Some of you are running this morning. Maybe you came through those doors carrying something that you haven't told anyone about yet. A diagnosis, a grief, a decision you made that you just can't take back, or maybe it's a yes that still terrifies you. Maybe you have fear about what comes next, but maybe there's joy there too. Maybe it's underneath it all, and you're not sure you're allowed to feel both at the same time. Easter says you are allowed. Because fear and joy is not the absence of faith. It is faith in motion. It is faith doing something. You are those women. You are those women right now, this morning. And you and I are already running as fast as our legs can carry us. And there on the road is Jesus waiting for us with a word to rejoice. He's right there in front of you. And so grab a hold. Grab a hold to whatever part you can grab a hold of. Because he is back. He is back to change this world and to change our lives. And as we grab a hold, we are told yet again to go and tell the others. Alleluia, Christ is risen. The Lord is risen indeed. Alleluia.